Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and to our latest Storm of Swords discussion. This week we are talking about chapters 30 to 35, which is Jon 4 to Cat 6. And next week we'll be talking about 36 to 41, which is Davos 4 to Jon 5, which is actually to the end of Steel and Snow.
Oh, is it right? Okay,
yeah,
good.
We're a good chunk of the way through. I'm beginning to wonder, will winds come like this? Will it be in two parts?
It might be, you know. Yeah.
This is Clare, by the way.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, because like some of my students are reading, obviously, Song by Fire, but I think it's in 10 parts in German.
Oh,
10
wow.
different books, yeah. So, okay. But yeah, this week is action-packed.
Yes.
And you were saying lots of fighting.
Yeah, so we've got Jon fighting and the wildlings fighting with the wall. We've got Jaime fighting with his shame. We've got Tyrion kind of fighting a little bit with his pride and his father, as they always do. There's the massive fight at Craster's with the mutiny in Sam's chapter. There's the huge fight between the Hound and Beric Dondarrion in Arya's chapter. And in Cat's chapter, Hoster loses his fight for life.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, Edmure has a bit of a fight in that chapter as well with an arrow. Or four.
Yes.
Bran and Meridian, thank you so much for joining us in the chat. And yes, so first chapter this week was Jon 4, and a short little chapter, but very action-packed. I know that you're going to want to talk a lot about the wall and the nature of the wall, but I have a big question. At one stage, we're told that as they're climbing, they have to be careful because the wall is weeping, and that the wall will melt under human touch in certain conditions. And I just wondered, is there something there to do with the enchantment? Because it seems like it wouldn't melt. It would be like, because all I could think was Dumb and Dumber when his tongue gets stuck.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't melt under human touch, right? Like your hand would get stuck.
No, not in those conditions. It wouldn't. No.
So, oh hi Victoria. Yeah, I'm just wondering, melting wall under human touch? I'm not sure. And this is Jon. Are we on Jon 4 or Jon 6? Did I write that down wrong?
I don't know. I've just got the chapter 30.
Chapter 30. I think it's Jon 4. Sorry, Claire, what were you going to say?
Well, it's I also wouldn't have thought that it was warm enough for the wall to be kind of weeping or melting. It's very strange, you know. Seems to be different conditions and different temperatures that you expect. There wouldn't be any change to the wall, but we get quite a good description of the wall in this chapter. That it's not. I think you imagine it to be pretty straight from one end to the other, but actually it's not. There's lots of ravines and it dips down, and the forest actually grows right up to the wall, up to the ice, which is where the climbers were able to start climbing up the wall.
That they shouldn't have let it grow so far towards the wall, and I thought, oh yeah, well that's true because that's obvious. However, he also says that the wall will defend itself. I wonder, is there something to do with old magic to not let the trees grow up towards the wall? Like the trees will help out people, or the trees might fight the wall. Like if it's, you know, the forest. I wonder.
Maybe.
Because
it's like nature fighting.
Yeah, in Sam's chapter, Mormont talks a lot about the old kind of knowledge that the Night's Watch have ignored or twisted or just forgotten. Bran, no problem at all. It is Jon 4. You're not an idiot at all. And Meridian is a book ahead of us in the reread. So yeah, it's easy to get muddled up. So guys in the chat, while we're talking about Jon 4, maybe you could let us know what you think about the wall, any kind of, even if it's tinfoil, any kind of theories you have on the wall would be great. But yeah, so the trees, I think, obviously the Night's Watch, it's a practical thing, so people won't get onto the wall. But I wonder, is there some connection with old magic there that's been lost? It starts off this chapter with Jon wondering if he should just do what Ygritte wanted to do and run away and go live with Gendal's children. And it made me wonder, Gendel sounds very like Grendel from Beowulf, and which, you know, a huge influence on Lord of the Rings, but obviously on George as well. I'm just wondering, has that legend grown out of something else that's underground? That may be underground. I know it was mentioned in last week's chapter as well. But yeah, I wonder, is there something underground, some sort of...
I think there's a whole load of stuff that's going on underground. In Arya's chapter, the Hill Cave is referred to an old place that's deep and full of secrets. And I think that's exactly what's happening everywhere. Like, it's this subterranean thing going on that's old and that's been lost. And I mean, there's quite a few things that with these rereads, I remember the broad details of what's happening in the story, but every now and again there's a real like, oh God, I have no idea that that's where that came from, or that's who said that, I was really I'd kind of forgotten what happened with Mormont and what he said just before he died, and like his dying words. I'd completely forgotten all about that he wanted Jorah to join the war. That was his dying wish, and I completely forgot about that. I knew that he'd forgiven him, but anyway, that's a bit later on in Sam's chapter. In this one, there's also, as well as the notion of like magical, mystical stuff going on at the wall, there's also this notion as well that the Night's Watch that are attached to the wall, a wall is only as strong as the men who defend it, which obviously this is something that Ned said to Jon, and Jon remembers this when he looks at the wall defending itself and the sheets of ice coming down. So there's this kind of notion that the wall will stay true as long as the Night's Watch stay true. And we know that there's all sorts of stuff that's happening with that later on down the line. But the two seem somehow, in terms of magic, kind of symbiotically linked, that the failure or success of the wall depends on the failure or success of the Order of the Night's Watch.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. Meridian and Bran have some theories here. Meridian wonders, is it's weirwood or black stone at the base of, or they form the base of the wall. And Bran thinks that the others built the wall. I think it's a combination of a few of those things. I actually think that giants are also involved in the building of the wall. I think there was a pact between men, others, children of the forest, giants. I think there was this kind of global kind of pact where they all came together, and there are different factions came together in the way that we see different factions come together with Westerosi houses and regions and things like that. So
I think the fact that we know very little about ice magic, as opposed to, we've learned quite a bit about fire magic, or at least we see it more in action in these chapters. But I think the knowledge around ice magic and how to wield ice magic is linked to old magic, and that's a huge part of the knowledge that's lost. So we just get glimpses of these things like, wow, there's this enormous ice structure in the middle of this story. Who built it? What's its purpose? The only thing that we think of as readers is this wall is so prolific that it's got to come down at some point in the story. I mean, seeing it on the TV show, just to pause the book for a second, and the imagery of that happening in the TV show was like, I could hardly breathe when I was watching it. It was just so, because this is, as a reader, this is one of the big things that I've always wanted to know. who brings the wall down, what happens, will it come down? It feels like it's inevitable that it will.
I think it's going to be very different in the book. I was actually a little let down by that scene. I
was let down by how it happened, but just the visual imagery of it, of that that section of it just collapsing was like, wow.
I do think it has something in common with fire magic, in that I think both of them involve blood sacrifice in some way.
Yes.
And we've had that with the Weirwoods as well, but there's a lot of references in this chapter to the blood on the wall. And almost like the blood is drinking, or the wall is drinking in the blood of the wildlings that hit it. Meridian wonders, do you think that was so that no one group could bring the wall down on its own? Yeah, I think so. And there's what movie is it? I want to say it's like Batman, one of those Batman Justice League movies. There's a similar idea in that, where the Atlantis people and the Amazonians and then men kind of take on different cubes. It's really shit, but they take different cubes and hide it, and it's kind of that idea that no one person would be able to manipulate.
Okay.
Bran says, I don't really believe in the magic of the wall. It's the story of old. I don't know if we can believe it, and I'm thinking the others will just walk right through it.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that's definitely a possibility. I don't know. I don't know what we'll see. Do you think that'll happen in Winds? What do you guys think, Bran and Meridian, in the chat? Do you think that'll happen in Winds? Anything will happen with them coming through the wall?
I'm just thinking, though, Bran, I just want to ask you a question back. I agree, actually. I think the others will be able to just walk straight up and straight through it, and it'll be a real shock. But what about the Whites? Like, the army of the dead, who they're going to need as they're encroaching into Westeros?
Well, it's almost impossible to talk about this chapter and not, because we've done it already, link it into the Sam chapter we'll get later, because Sam makes an interesting comment in that chapter where he says bones can't become whites, which I found a bit strange, because like, well, how do you know that, Sam? You didn't even know they fully existed until recently. So how do you suddenly have this knowledge that bones can't become whites? Which made me wonder, is there something to do with there still has to be some sort of flesh or the remnants of blood still left on a body for it to be whited? I mean, that's certainly not how they've done it in the show.
Well, it's like an extreme version of skin changing, isn't it? Or warging into, they suppose they're warging. That's how I would see it. They're kind of putting their consciousness into the Whites in order to get them to move and move in the direction that they want them to. I don't know.
Bran says, I think it's part. Yes, I think it's part because the others come with the winds of winter. Yeah, there's definitely that. And again, in the Sam's chapter, the sons are coming. It's not just the Whites are coming. Craster's sons are coming. That's the big thing. And Meridian says the very end of the Winds of Winter maybe depends if it really is one of only 2 books left. Oh God, Meridian, I know.
You thinking Meridian thinks there might be another book after Dream of Spring? Possibly.
I mean, since George started writing these books, we've kind of lost spring as a season. It doesn't really exist anymore, which is ironic. It is literally a dream.
Just a couple of things that I want to bring up about this. That was in the content of this chapter. The first one was the description of the wall, and that the east is the Bay of Seals, and the west is like the Shadow Tower, and that the depths of what's described as the depths of the gorge around the Shadow Tower. And I kind of know, I know what a gorge is, like Cheddar Gorge, and I know, it's basically a canyon. But I actually went on to Google to get a full description of what a gorge is, because I think the Shadow Tower has some significance to Quaith's prophecy of Beneath the Shadow, because beneath the Shadow Tower are these depths of gorges, so deep, narrow. It's a deep, narrow valley with a steep, rocky wall, and usually with a stream running through it. So it's known. So another word for it would be a canyon or a gully or a pass. And I just think that there's something about the Shadow Tower and the geography around the Shadow Tower that means that you're able to get under it much easier than any other part of the wall. And I think that maybe if Daenerys later on in the books is traveling north, and she has to pass beneath the shadow, that this is what it potentially could be, the Shadow Tower. I'm sure that's probably been said a million times before, but it just the description of the depths of the gorges, specifically around the Shadow Tower. It could have been any other tower, but it had to be the Shadow Tower, which just kind of made me raise an eyebrow a little bit.
I think you're absolutely right, because I think we have to see somebody move north eventually, apart from Bran, and I think it'll have to be. I think it'll have to be Daenerys. And I actually, it's funny because Meridian commented on our discussion last week, and I mentioned we were talking about Bran and the reads, and I mentioned that I think there will come a point where we can no longer get POV chapters from Bran because he'll know too much, and that's one of the reasons why we don't get POV chapters from Kings. So we will need to have eyes in the north eventually, and that will have to be, someone like Dany or Jon, or even potentially in a prologue, someone like Mira. And it's funny that the Bran and Meridian are talking about how many books might be left. He has said that he won't have any more new POV characters. And I wonder, is that his way of limiting himself, like reining it in? Do you know?
Yeah, and it will be I don't know, like a new pseudonym for a character that.
Yeah, and that in and of itself, though, it will create problems for him because he needs to have eyes in certain parts of the world, and if he's limited to whatever characters are left, because I'm not entirely sure we'll get a POV from Jon either. So yeah. What are the guys saying in the chat? Bran says, if it's the 7 books, it will be The Winds of Winter. If it's more, then it could be the next book for the wall coming down. They very well just cross the bridge. What stops the others from crossing that at that point? Yeah, there must be something else there. It might have to do with the Whites, as you said, Claire, that the Whites might not be able to get across. I mean, you have to find a way to get your army across. That's the problem that Dany's having. How is she going to get the Dothraki across the sea? They don't do sea, so how does she do that? And I think that's it. Yeah, the guys are just talking about
how many books.
Yeah, so it's a very short chapter, and when they get to the top, Ygritte is visibly shaken, and it's Ygritte we haven't seen before, and she's afraid because she nearly died 3 times or whatever. But she's also properly grief-stricken that they didn't find the horn, and that they didn't find a way of getting the rest of the wildlings through. And it made me love the wildlings even more, that they're so invested in helping one another. They don't have lands to fight for, they don't have money to fight for, they just want to help one another. And it's so different from everyone else in the story. They really are trying to help each other as a group. The cannibals and all tried to get through the wall. There's no, that we know of, there's no stabbing at this point. There's no, like, they really are at this point just very concerned with saving everybody. And it's just, and even Mormont in the chapter with Sam realizes that they're human beings and they're trying to get they're trying to get other human beings across, and that we need to learn that. And it's interesting
Yeah.
that Mormont has that conversation with Sam, because we see John really experiencing it in person, and yet still being like, oh, I hope half them die going up this road.
Yeah. Again, it's, you know, it's that indoctrination of sewn into the vows, which then makes you have an attitude and behavior of how you live your day-to-day life. And it's all probably just completely corrupt. Things have been forgotten. Like Mormont says, we got it wrong. We lost what we knew too many years ago. But it's funny that you say I just thought, that's a really kind of a sort of positive way of looking at it, I suppose, with Ygritte and her crying in the wall, and how there's this sense of like camaraderie between the Wildings, because I didn't see it that way. I can now. I mean, I can see your point of view, but my reaction to her behavior when they got to the top of the wall is she clearly hates the wall and everything about it, what it stands for, this barrier between us and them, you know, this kind of sense of persecution that, you know, we've got it worse than whatever's beyond this wall. And she, you know, she decries the wall all the way through this chapter. And to me, it feels like almost tears of frustration of, if we'd have found the horn, we could have brought this monstrous structure that I hate down like that. And yes, it would have benefited, you know, the clans people and all that kind of thing. But I just think she hated it, and it's those tears of frustration rather than, you know, I mean, what I wanted to ask you about this was, she says that one of the things that happened while they were trying to find the Horn of Winter, and I kind of knew this but had forgotten about it, that they'd opened 50 graves and let the shades loose and still didn't find the Horn of Joramun. So what are these shades?
Graves?
Yeah, what graves? What are the shades? Will we see them? Have we already seen them? So it just, I suppose just more questions.
Interested in knowing what shades. Interested in how that connects with Sam and his bones reference. We'll get to that. Very hard to separate these chapters, I feel, this week. But I just feel, and Meridian says, do you think Gurm is trying to show that civilization is going to hell, and the only way, and that only the wildling can save us in the end? I do think that the wildlings, I think they'll have a huge part to play in the end game. It's one of those things. It's like, as soon as they become civilized and they lose that tribal charm and freedom that we've seen through John's chapters to this point, they'll end up being like, will they end up being just Lannisters in 100 years, or you know, like, how can they really, will they end up being Starks in 100 years? That's not necessarily a good thing either. So I totally get what you're saying. Ygritte definitely hates the wall, but I wonder, in the end, will they see that the wall, or will there come a point where people will lament the separation they once had from that world? At least with the others, it's fairly clear what they want. It's not always clear with other men what they want, like as we see with the Frey chapters coming up, or even the next Jaime chapter. I mean, you hear about the others and they're scary, and even like John is with some of the scariest people on the face of the earth. And then the next Jaime chapter, the stuff that Rourke and Shagwell say to Brienne, you're like, holy shit. And it's like that happens. That's actually, they are men. They're, you know, George is inspired by real life people when he does these things. So I love the wildlings. I'm all in looking at the good side, cannibals and all. Just, I think, especially, you know, that was it the last John chapter or the one before, where they're having that rousing sing song as they're going through the
Yeah.
thing. We talked last week then about the incest rules, and there's a lot to the wildlings, I think.
You get this sense that the wildlings are always, by, you know, from the Rangers' perspective, that the wildlings are always lurking around, you know, right by the wall, ready to attack and ready to kind of, you know, get in the boats and go around the Bay of Seals and kind of attack some of the areas in the north by Castle Black and things. And it just, so you know, there seems to be this kind of like imminent danger always from the wildlings, but then you hear that the Fens who were on this expedition have never ever seen the wall before. So this is that the Fens have a culture and a civilization where they've been quite happy doing Fen stuff without ever feeling the need to go anywhere near the wall and attack Westeros or the Night's Watch or whatever. And I thought, that's quite interesting that, you know, there are northern wildlings from really far north, like the frozen lands north, that have never been anywhere near the wall and never even seen it, not even from a distance.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, he was inspired by Hadrian's Wall, and a lot of Scottish history actually comes into play, especially in this book with the Red Wedding and all that. But it is one of those things, you know, that the Scottish in particular fought valiantly against the Romans and against, you know, the civilized part of the world. As hard as it was, as harsh as life was, same in Ireland, as harsh as life was in those areas, they fought for their freedom and showed they mooned everybody with a blue arse. Is that real history? I can't remember. Bran says, I really think he's retelling the story first and foremost, or retelling history first and foremost. That's why I think I'm so strong on Arya sailing west. She will be Christopher Columbus / Nymeria. Hopefully not the genocidal maniac. Hopefully Nymeria. Meridian said, although it's Arya, so anything could happen. Meridian says, I thought they were all giant graves.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Ah, okay. I missed that. So are they the giant whites that we'll see later on, I wonder? Because it would make sense that in the frozen ground of the north, bodies wouldn't rot that much. So when Sam says, I know I keep coming back to this about the bones can't be whites. Well, actually, there's every reason to believe that your body will be preserved if you're in the frozen ground. So there may not be that many bones unless you burn them. Like, there may not be many bones around, if you know what I mean. It might all be kind of, there might be a bit of flesh and stuff left on a lot of bodies. Was there anything else then on John 4?
No, I think we're ready to move on.
I'm going to surprise a lot of people. This is Jaime 4, chapter 31, is the chapter that stays with me the most.
Right.
Of a lot of chapters in the entire series. The description of the hand.
Yeah. This
kind of emerging of Jaime from, I feel like, this PTSD state of mind that he's been in since he watched the Starks burned. This is where his separation from Cersei begins. For him, I think, as well. There's so much about this chapter that I love. It's so graphic and it's very difficult to read. And I made the mistake of having cheese while reading this chapter.
Oh no! Oh God! With a rotten hand.
So it's good. If you're on a diet, all I'll say is read this chapter. It'll turn you off food. So of course, this is the chapter that we meet Qyburn properly in this chapter. We really meet him a bit more this time. There's a few clues about him. We've met Roose a lot, but we see him from a different perspective, I guess. But before all that, just this Jaime and what Brienne has to go through. Like, Brienne is basically his carer, and she has to clean him up, and they're humiliated, they're attacked and beaten and assaulted and bullied, and you know, it's such a difficult chapter to read, but I think it's fair to say that Jaime lost his hand protecting Brienne in a lot of ways, and he was willing to lose his life to protect her as well, even though he keeps calling her wench and bitch and all this kind of thing. I mean, he has a very complicated relationship with women, but I do think he, in a lot of ways, Jaime is a true knight, and I think this chapter shows the best and worst of that. But yeah, sorry, I went in a bit of rant. Hi, Ian. The Germ diet, yes.
I just think that, yeah, you're right. This is the beginning of the kind of deconstruction of Jaime, isn't it? The chapter starts with him crying and praying and feeling, for the first time in his life, real sympathy for his brother, who's had, you know, who's had the mickey taken out of him all his life, and you know, picked on by his father and everything. So he starts to really feel sympathy for Tyrion. But we, as the reader, and also Jaime as the character, it's kind of who is he now? Who am I now? What happens now? And it's very, there's lots of stuff in this chapter that are very poetic. The fact that he's going back to Harrenhal, where he won his knighthood in the most disgraced possible way that he could. He's not, you know, he's nothing without his sword hand. It's quite sad. It really is quite sad, and it's really, like, you know, the description of his hand is just horrific. What did he mean when he said Ares? There's a couple of quite interesting quotes that have been talked about by the fandom for years and years. So, I cannot die while Cersei lives. We were born together. We will die together. And around about this time, when he's kind of thinking about the Starks and about him, he sort of starts reflecting on when he won his knighthood, and he talks about Ares honoured me and then spat on me. So he honoured him with becoming a knight of the Kingsguard, but what was the then spat on me? What was the bit that he's aggrieved by with Ares the most, do you think? Is it the fact that he was taken away from his sister? Is it the fact that he made him kill him, made him watch what, you know, just...
It's the fact that he never got to be a knight.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. I think
yeah,
he doesn't get to be the Arthur Dane of his generation. He gets to be the person who stands outside a room while the king rapes the queen.
You know, it's quite interesting because the way that Jaime reflects on what being a knight means, and the way that Sandor reflects on what being a knight means, they're not a million miles away from each other. Yeah, it's quite depressing, really, when you think about it.
It's totally depressing.
Yeah,
because he is being a true knight here, and it's natural for him. He doesn't really think about it. He just does it. And he even says he finds himself whispering to her, just go very far away and let them have the meat. Which
yeah.
But that is the best advice to take. And then he's reading sapphires, and I mean, everything is instinct for him, because I think deep down he isn't Tywin. He has quite a lot of honor. He isn't Tyrion. I think and it's interesting that we have the Jaime Tyrion chapters back to back, you know, and you know, we've got Jon, Jaime, Tyrion, you know, they're all very, very different people. But the Jaime Tyrion chapters back to back, because Tyrion, this is definitely, you know, this book is definitely Tyrion's descent into dark Tyrion.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 3, Tyrion 3. The black suit. This is his, like, he, you know, even in the next chapter you see that. But yeah, Jaime, I mean, it's just the horrors of what's being said to him and what they're being, like, the fact that he's been given horse piss to drink, and the fact that he's been humiliated by, they're being put face to face to ride together, and I don't know how I think other men would let her be raped. I think I can't think of anyone else in the story unless it was like a Stark, like a Ned or Rob or someone, John. But I can't think of another person apart from Brienne that would do that. I'd like, would the Hound do that? Maybe the Hound would do that. I don't know though. Like I think he knows from, ironically and twisted as it sounds, he knows from his close, intimate relationship with his sister what it means to be in that position as a woman. I think that's the only reason he can empathize with her, right? Or is it because of what he saw Ares do to his wife? Maybe it's both, but there's something in Jaime that's, I don't know. I don't know how everybody in the chat feels.
Well, he describes Brienne to Qyburn when Qyburn asks who is Brienne to you, and he describes her as my protector. So I think there's just, there's something in there with Jaime that's kind of like, there is some honor there. It's just been pulled around in, but
it burned at the start.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think there is definite like PTSD with the when he talks about the let them do it and go away inside, and he thinks about like the Starks when Robert took the throne. But also, because I was thinking that's a really that's quite a profound quote in the book, but it's also, you're right, it probably is the right advice to have in those circumstances. And I just immediately thought of Hodor and Bran, and I thought, I wonder if that's what's going on in Hodor's brain when he just thinks to himself, just let him do it, and while it's happening, just go away inside. And it's like, oh God, when you think of it that way, the violation and the kind of mental rape, I suppose, you could look at it that way. And it's just, you could apply that quote to exactly those circumstances. Yeah, I've always felt a bit weird about that whole warging Hodor, or skin changing into Hodor.
Because it's very, because you've nowhere to go.
Yeah, it's brutal.
I mean, spoilers if you haven't seen Get Out, but it's the sunken place, and that's exactly. Have you seen Get Out?
I don't think I have. Okay, no.
Put that on your list for this week.
Right. Okay.
I'm not going to say anymore.
Is that the one with the guy with multiple?
Directed it. There's a British actor who's the main guy in it.
Has he got like a multiple personality disorder?
No, that's Split, I think. I haven't seen that. There's a British guy in it, but I don't know what his name is. He's in Black Panther as well. I can't remember his name, but yeah, it's brilliant. Get Out. Okay.
I've heard it's good, actually. Yeah, I have heard of it. Yeah.
It's so good. A lot of Hodor-y stuff going on there, I think. But yeah, I think the reason this chapter, when I think of this book, I think of this chapter. I don't know why. It's just there's something about the pain and the suffering, and yet how conscious he is of everything, and how honest he is of everything. And Jaime has been honest since his very first chapter. It's not like and there's very few characters, with the exception of maybe Cat, that there are very few characters that hide who they are. But Jaime is definitely, I think for me, he's even more honest than maybe Cersei, because he's more self-aware in a lot of ways. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was Qyburn, and just how intelligent this character is, because George kind of slips in things, like how he's going to treat the wound with bread mold. And it's like, wow, that's like an antibiotic. That's like, this guy, it's already foreshadowing. This guy is different from other maesters. This guy isn't just going to give you milk and poppy and... Yeah, there's a lot going on with this guy.
Do you think do we need to ask that question, that obligatory question when a new character is introduced, of like, who is he really though?
Yeah. Obviously.
Is he like a secret, the whole reigns of Castamere? I don't. He's an interesting character, Qyburn.
Deeply suspicious of the High Septon.
Yeah.
So you're instantly like, oh, this is definitely a man of science. This guy is, this guy is not. He doesn't suffer fools. This is the real deal. Why was Jaime like? And I know this may sound like a stupid question, but why was he so determined to not lose any more of his arm? Like he's lost.
It could just be that Lannister vanity thing.
Okay.
And also I think it's his sword arm, isn't it, as well as just his sword hand.
Yeah.
And he had already in this chapter he's thinking about this golden hand, and that somehow there'll be some sort of maybe some way that it won't be as bad as all that in the future. So yeah.
I think there's a bit of neglect here. I think Jaime, and we in the next chapter we learn that Tywin is making this sword for him. It's bigger than Joffrey's. Tywin pins a lot on Jaime, but I feel like Tywin didn't pay close enough attention. Like Jaime can do very little with his other hand, and I'm not sure that's not a good training. That's actually not a good thing.
Yeah.
I kept thinking of the Princess Bride. And I feel like it's so typical Lannister to go, oh well, I can do this. This can just jauntily land on my hip. It's like that isn't good. That isn't very good. That isn't like even the scene from the show, which it probably won't happen in the books, but that scene from the show with Arthur Dane with the two swords, and it's like, yeah, a good fighter. If you're gonna be if you want to be the continent's best fighter, you're gonna practice with both, right?
Yeah.
It's that vanity thing that you said.
The concept though of Jaime loses his hand and how he reacts to that and how it impacts on him, and then in the next the very next chapter is Tywin presenting his other son with a sword. It's the definition of who he is. It's all about his ability as a fighter and his sword hand, and then lo and behold, we've got this like unbelievable sword that's been forged that's all for Jaime and all about Jaime. So again, that's almost like another punch to the gut when you think about how just basically what love him or hate him, whatever Jaime is going through at the moment, that's just like another punch to the gut.
We have to talk about Roose in this chapter.
I was just going to say the big thing about this really for me is, oh my God, the way they appear, Roose Bolton and the Freys, the way that they just appear in this chapter to inform Jaime about Rob's betrayal with the Freys and everything. And it's like, why as readers, and why did we ever why were we ever shocked at the Red Wedding? In hindsight, it's so obvious what's going on here with Roose and the Freys, and also previously, other chapters where it's like Roose is really dodgy, and then of course, later on we hear about what's going on at Winterfell, and we know that's completely different to actually what's happened. But why are people not more suspicious, or why did we I read this chapter and thought I should never, the Red Wedding, that whole incident should never have been that much of a shock to me, like at all. I should have seen this coming completely.
But at the time, it's like they build up guest right a lot. They build up the fact that you respect your liege lord. There's that you respect. There's a certain hierarchy that you have to play into. But you're right. I mean, Roose instantly separates the two of them. He treats Jaime very well. I mean, this guy, I mean, this guy was just let go. Karstarks, there's war between Karstarks and Starks now because of this guy. Rhys should be, you know, knocking him out and sending him to the nearest dungeon, letting him rot, literally. So yeah, there are a lot of red flags, but I think obviously Jaime, you know, commenting again that he is an ant who's afraid. But it's like there are so many Lannister Frey tie-ins here that it's hard to ignore it. Yeah. So yeah, I think at this stage the Roose Tywin thing, and I think it's pretty much confirmed in the next chapter.
Yes.
That Tywin Roose connection. In hindsight, of course. Or did anyone see it? Even if anyone in the chat was clever enough to see that when they first read, I don't know if anyone did, but yeah. Anything else for Jaime? Anybody any questions about Jaime 4? I do think this is definitely up there. Definitely one of the most impactful chapters for me. For the entire series, I have to say.
It's definitely a defining experience for Jaime and also for Jaime and Brienne's relationship, I think.
I would love, this is one of those chapters that I would love to also have Brienne's POV.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those ones where you'd love to get, like we got that a little bit in a Game of Thrones with Cat and Tyrion. This is one of those times that I would really like the Brienne version. And because I'm sure it built a lot of respect for her. Even though at one stage she says, don't die, don't give up, don't be craven. And she knows exactly, it's like one knight speaking to another knight. She knows exactly how to push his button. And Brienne said, no, it's shock to me. The Black Dinner in Glencoe. My maiden name was MacDonald. There you go.
Yes. The MacDonalds, and what was it? The massacre of the Campbells and the MacDonalds. Horrible.
Glencoe.
Glencoe.
Okay, so then we're into Tyrion. This is there's a lot happening in this chapter. I think. And I think what shocked me about this chapter is I kept thinking of it's as plain as the nose in your face. Oh wait, there is no nose. Just this kind of he starts out by he's on a kind of a little, what would we call it, mission with Bran, I guess, to check out what needs fixing and all that kind of thing. Master of coin kind of research, and he sees these kids climbing up. I think it's the old kind of battlements or something that they had for the battle, and there's still a lot of debris has been cleaned up, but not enough. And he thinks to himself, oh, I should put some gold cloaks on that so we don't have the kids falling down and breaking their back. And then afterwards thinks, actually, just let them fall and break their fucking neck. I don't care. And it's like, wow, okay, so we've gone from Jaime to Tyrion, like just this kind of, Jaime, the first time we see him, we instantly hate him because he pushes Bran out a window and breaks his back. And here Tyrion is like, oh, I'll protect the little children. Actually, no, fuck that. I don't want to protect them. And it's like, wow, we're put on your black Spider-Man suit. Here we go. So there's a lot of references as well at the start to Cersei's people. So she owns all of the handmaids that are around Sansa. And Varys's little birds. And yet, as plain as the nose on his face, even like, it's hard to at this stage go, why are you so trusting of Bronn and Shay? And what about your father's people? I mean, if Varys has the means and Cersei have the means to have, why would you expect your dad to? Especially when later they're talking and he says, oh, you're okay to sleep with loads of whores, but you can't sleep with your wife. It's like, if he knows that you're sleeping with whores.
Well, he doesn't want any bad PR for House Lannister. He even says in this chapter, extravagance has its uses. We must demonstrate the wealth and power of Casterly Rock. So it's all about what people think of the Lannisters. And preserving the Lannister name. So of course he will have dibs on Tyrion 24/7. Of course he would, because if anyone's going to like promote bad PR for the clan, for the Lannister name and you know, the family in Casterly Rock, it's going to be his dwarf son Tyrion. So he would never in a million years I wouldn't be surprised if Tywin didn't have dibs on him every step of the way, from the whole with the capture and the kidnap, to the Eyrie, to the trip to the Wall, to the whole, you know. I think Tywin's had eyes on Tyrion all the time.
Yeah, Bran says Jaime losing his hand and Cersei losing her beauty really makes me believe that Tyrion will lose his tongue. And Meridian agrees. Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of foreshadowing for that. Tyrion uses his tongue. He gets in trouble. He wishes he didn't speak at times. He also uses a lot in lovemaking, and you know, there's a lot to do with that. And he
certainly shows his Lannister claws in this chapter with Simon Silvertongue. So that's another like tongue reference. But
by the way, kudos to Simon. Like,
yeah, he was a bit ballsy, wasn't he?
Yeah, it's like, I get like that with a bit of wine in me, sure. Just start in the chat. Just start.
Let's negotiate, shall we?
I do think he's becoming like there's a bit of a role reversal going on here. I have to say, I see so little of Tywin and Jaime.
Yeah.
Much of a Tyrion.
Yeah.
And I don't even get into the secret Targ thing, but if we are going to have Targs, I definitely think it's going to be Jaime and Cersei and not Tyrion. Although I do think all the Lannisters will just be Lannisters. But I think if there are any Targs, I'd be like 5%.
Well, I've actually said in my notes that whole thing with Simon Silvertongue was very, the way Tyrion was behaving was very Tywin-esque, you know, very underhand, very kind of like behind the scenes, you know. He'll let you think that this is going to be is how it's going to be, but actually you're done. You were already done, you know, 2 sentences ago. It's finished, it's over. And it was very very, very Tywin-esque, and you know, Tyrion showing his Lannister roots. I think there's no question that he's Tywin's son in my mind.
No, I don't think so. So there's a few things mentioned. Obviously, I have to say this is going to make me unpopular, but I have the wine. I'm going to channel Simon. I'm more upset over Ice than I ever was about Lady or Grey Wind.
Yeah.
It really makes me feel bad. I know it's an object, but it's just like, oh man. When you and you hear about the color and the steel, and it's almost like blood mixing with tar, and it's this great image of. I just get really. I know. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get pulled. If anything happens to the other direwolves, I'll be devastated, especially Ghost. But I do like. I feel when I first saw this in the show, I can't remember if I read it in the book first. I'm pretty sure I saw it in the show first. Oh no, I would have read it in the book first, actually. It just that kind of image of the red, and it's horrible. I really, especially when they've 2, like they can't. There's no way of getting this back together as Ice, is there? They'll never be able to make it again. They can't remake it, can
they? No. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here about the whole thing. I mean, we could spend an hour talking about Valyrian steel swords. But we get a bit of a history lesson in this segment of the chapter where we find out there are thousands. So they're not as rare as I thought they were, actually. And Tyrion reckons there's probably about 200 in the 7 kingdoms, which is a fair few still for something that's quite rare.
But we haven't really, like, I wonder where the bulk of them are outside of Westeros. So, would the doom, like, would any Valyrian steel have survived the doom of Valyria? Like, would it have been destroyed? Would it have melted? in the Doom? Is my question, I
I'm
guess.
not sure. Yeah, so there could be plenty more in ASOS.
Yeah,
just this whole thing
interesting.
about like why would there's a couple of things the fact that they're not as rare as you think. Tywin has clearly tried to get his hands on them several times before in the past, and the lesser lords just are not giving them up. I mean, this must be really, really difficult because Tywin seems to be the kind of guy that if he wants something, he'll get it. So this has probably really been under his skin for a long, 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 long time. But just going back to the history of Bright Raw, that this twice, well, correct me if I'm wrong, or I'm just wondering if I'm reading my notes right here. So there's this king, the second King Tommen carried it back to Valyria, and then Uncle Gerard went, Tywin's one of Tywin's younger brothers, went to go and look for it, and both of them never returned. I can't remember this thing about King Tommen carrying it to Valyria. I remember that Uncle Gerard went off on a quest to try and find it and never came back. And there's all sorts of theories about who Uncle Gerard could be.
Yeah.
But King Tommen carrying it back to Valyria, and the fact that it's red and black, which sounds very much like the colours and the, it just sounds very Targaryen.
It's almost though as if the steel isn't happy. That it's almost like it hasn't been done right. Like there's something hasn't quite whatever enchantment is usually needed or whatever process is usually needed. Something has gone wrong, and the guy said, what's his name? What's the guy's name that does it? Sorry, I have it open.
Oh, Mott. Is that the armorer? Yeah.
Yeah, he says that I could try it again, but I think it's going to be the same result because ice was kind of blue, right? There was like a blue look to it. So have they taken the ice magic out of it or something? There's something gone wrong there. I'm just looking for the Tommen line there, but yeah, I think you're right. I think it's Tommen is the guy's name. But yeah, and Bran just confirmed it, so thank you. Meridian says, I remember Tommen taking the sword back to Valyria. Yeah, and there's something here about, that he has had uncles lose their lives trying to get this sword back.
Yeah.
It looks like Tywin is basically like set to lose his life, all of his money, his legacy, his children, and Casterly Rock to try and get Valyrian's sword. It seems as if like Tywin wants power and he wants to be in control, but a lot of it seems to be driven by this need to be recognized as a legitimate house, and you're not recognized as a legitimate house unless you have that.
Yeah, we must demonstrate the wealth and power of Casterly Rock. I mean, most people take him for the real, including the small folk, take him as the real, protector of the realm. He's always been more effective and efficient, and in his dealings with, even at the very end of this chapter, when the letter comes from Bowen about the wildlings and the threat in the north and at the wall, his reply wasn't as dismissive as I kind of remember it. It was almost like he was saying, we're a bit busy, tied up here right now, but if we could help, we would, but, hopefully you'll be okay, but we just can't help right now. And it's like, he's actually not as he's not as bad a ruler, possibly, than the previous kings and queens that they've had. But yeah, he's got this constant need to continue to feel that he has to demonstrate that and demonstrate. He's screwed up, Tywin. He really is. Really.
Yeah, AU's in the chat. Hey, AU, John's in the chat. And I have good news. Claire started watching Westworld.
Yes, I've watched the first 3 episodes, John, and I couldn't sleep last night because I was like, it was just going round and round and round in my head. So yeah.
So let us know when you're going live for your Westworld stream, because I'll definitely be there this week. And
I'm burning through them.
Maybe next week Claire will be there.
Catching up. Yeah.
But yeah, it's I had a question about this Tywin moment with Bright Roar, for just to backtrack, because Bright Roar is such a big thing. Will we see Bright Roar, do you think, in this series? Do you think we'll see it by the end of the book, by the end of the series?
Probably not. I mean, unless we have this like dramatic return of Gerard and he's managed to find it somehow. But
I would love to not see it.
Yeah, I don't think we will. Yeah.
I just feel like it would be very nice for Lannisters to never be legitimized. Because I think even with these 2 swords, and Tyrion said, oh yeah, they look fine to me, you know, they're grand to me, but you can kind of get this impression Tywin, they'll do, but it's still like he had to cause a war, he had to take a head, you know, there's all these things. It's because his psychopath son, like they stole the sword. They didn't earn it.
Yeah.
His psychopath grandson, I should say. It's there's something, it doesn't quite scratch the itch for him, I think. It's interesting as well, though, that he doesn't take it for himself. And that's because maybe they stole it. Maybe if it had been given, he would have kept it for himself. But he instantly gives it to Jaime and Joffrey, you know, the son and grandson. It's all about legacy for him. And then you've got the other son, potentially his only legitimate line left. If you're into the Jaime, Cersei are Targs. You've got Tyrion going, hello, we have no money. We have nothing. And meanwhile, we'll find out later, they probably have nothing left in Casterly Rock either. So, yeah. Garion.
His name's Garen Clare. Yeah, I think that what that is, Meridian, is listening to Roy de Trees. So I can't see how the names always are spelt. So I what have I written? Gerard. Yeah. No, it's Garion. That's it. Yeah, Garion.
Yeah, it's I don't want to see Bright Roar either, but
I don't think it should be that unattainable thing that the Lannister, you know, it's just not. It's always almost there, but never quite. Yeah,
that's why, like, I think it'd be very poetic to have that. I think we're going to have a lot of poetic endings.
Yeah,
I think that'll definitely be one of them, especially if they're separated from their swords. Like Brienne will get one, and then somebody else will get Joffrey's. You mentioned the Night's Watch and his reaction to the Night's Watch. I had a question about this. Does he not want to help the Night's Watch because it may be a combination of all these things? They can't afford to, or is it the slight he feels by the Night's Watch at Mormont having addressed all of the other kings, as well as Joffrey?
Well, you can tell that he doesn't like that, you know, and he mentions in the response that it's like, you know, make sure underlined 3 times that it's like, you know, this is the legitimate king. But I mean, I do think that maybe this is maybe this is something towards Tywin being a reasonably fair ruler. And the North and the Wall is part of the realm. And also he's probably got guys up there. He's certainly got Janos Slynt up there. So he's got eyes on the Wall. And he probably does feel that I should kind of go and help and sort that out. But actually, this stuff that's going on here but this needs to be sorted out first. Maybe he does have every intention later on down the line of going to, at least for not necessarily help, but just to find out what the fuck is going on.
I think I'll respectfully disagree. I think he wants to change this wishy-washy, we stay out of the politics of men type thing at the Wall. I think his first idea when he hears that the wildlings are coming south, oh well, the lands of the north can't support them. It's like, well, why are they coming south? The wrong question. Also, Tyrion already had that interaction with what's his name, the bad guy Thorn.
Yes,
already had that interaction with him where they were told, you know, whites are coming,
and
Tyrion decided to, you know, play, you know, big boy with the bully, and you know, get like not listen to him and just be like, oh, you know, Alistair, I just don't care, you're an idiot, and make fun of him in front of the court. But that doesn't even register with Tyrion here in this POV.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
I wonder, did Alistair have a point?
Yeah.
It doesn't even like that idea that we've heard it so many times in the book. Dark wings, dark words. Dark wings, no words is even scarier.
Yeah.
Like why don't you?
Yeah.
It's like he's met Mormont. He knows what this guy is like. Tywin has met Mormont. Like they know that this guy he's not a bullshitter. So Ion has everything sorted with Geryon, by the way. Geryon equals Benjen equals Euron equals Mance equals Howland Reed, and I'll add another one equals Rhaegar. Ion, you missed Rhaegar. They're all the same person. And when we throw in Quaid and Ashara Dane, they're all like just all the same kind of character. But yeah, this oh, we forgot to talk about the Sansa stuff, the creepy Sansa stuff. He wants Sansa. He wants her to love him, and he wants to sleep with her. He very quickly forgets Shay. Interestingly enough, is that the Shay getting naked as she always is. It's like, oh, Shay's naked, great. Now when he can't have Sansa, it's like, oh, now she's the one I want. And we've said this before. He doesn't really love Shay. You know, it's this is all a thing. As soon as he has Sansa, it's like, oh, she's actually what I want. Shay's always naked. Shay's always up for it. I don't want her. I want Sansa now. And it's very creepy. Very, very creepy. The way he talks about her. And
but he also wants Winterfell.
Yep.
So again, he's definitely showing his Lannister colours in this chapter. The fact that he kind of feels that his father's like, oh, you know, my dad's now got to rely on me because Uncle Kevin isn't around anymore, and it's like, really. Yeah, I think this thing about when he's talking about Sansa and thinking about Sansa, and he's kind of again reflecting in his own point of view that that she's like, you know, wife for all his life, and then later on in the chapter, Tywin is kind of like, need I remind you that a non-consummated marriage can be set to one side? So, yeah, I just wonder, will there be any kind of reunion? That's Marwyn, sorry. If there'll be any reunion between Tyrion and Sansa later on in the books.
I would like that. I would like to see that for sure. That's something that I'm very much looking forward to seeing.
Yeah.
I think, just to talk the TV show for a second, I think we're going to see that in the first episode of the next season. That could be even one of the first scenes in the next episode.
Yeah.
The first episode of the next season, them coming together. They're so important. I definitely can see Sansa, and I'm 95% sure Tyrion will survive the end game. So they're definitely going to be, and Sam, they're like my three. Like those three are going to make it to the end, and I think it's very important the relationship those three have, either with one another or some kind of weird triangle. I think Sam and Tyrion are going to have to get together at some stage. Potentially, I could be wrong, but I definitely think we're going to see Sansa and Tyrion. It's very important that they get back. And I wonder the change that Sansa's going through right now in the book. that will make her potentially one of Tyrion's, without his father being around, potentially one of the savviest political adversaries he'll come up against is a more mature Sansa, because unlike his father has seen him naked, but she has seen him at his most vulnerable and won, and she did that the first time on their wedding night. He's there with his manhood standing to attention, and she says, "Not interested," and it's haunting him, like it's distracting him in this chapter.
It's that unattainable thing again, isn't it?
It's very much really getting to the heart of what makes Tyrion tick as a man, for sure. And it's not. He knows that he's unattractive. He knows that he's a dwarf, and he knows that he's, everything. He says all these things that makes her that he believes is. It's funny because with the next Sam chapter as well, he says he has all this criticism that he gets from the outside world. He's turned inward as well, but he knows that the reason she doesn't want him first and foremost is that he's a Lannister, and there's nothing he can do about that. He'll always be a Lannister in her eyes. And that's the thing. Like, he has been able to pay women because he's a Lannister. He's been able to escape being a little person and the social implications of that at the time and all that. He's able to escape all that because of being a Lannister. But now, and I think he has a point. I think the reason obviously she has this idea of a knight and blah blah, but I think Sansa would have gotten over his physical differences. I think she would do her duty as a wife, and she may even learn to love him. But the fact that he's a Lannister is a bridge she doesn't voice that, but I definitely think that that's something that even later people who ship them, I don't think that's a line she'll ever be able to get over.
No, I don't.
I think his disability is one thing. That is something she would be able to get over. And I think that's what's really haunting him. Because Shay doesn't care what he looks like, because she's able to get over that. It's because he's a Lannister that she wants him nearly. But the one thing that gets him off with women is the one thing that Sansa, that doesn't work for her, and that makes it just far too tempting.
Just one thing about Shay, that she knew that Tyrion was quite surprised that she knew about Sansa's, Sansa and the wedding, and she kind of went, "Oh yeah, well, such a body tells such a body, and such a body was a cupbearer for such a body," and and it's like. Possibly it could be that, but also it just makes me think. I really like this theory that she's Sorella, the Sand Snake.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, this could be quite plausible.
I mean, I think she's either getting it from Varys or Tywin. Tywin, I think, but especially when Tywin says, "Oh, you can sleep with your whore. Your whore is you can't sleep with Sansa." I mean, it's very clear that he knows what's going on. It's not stupid. Unlike Tyrion in this chapter. Can I just ask, just in general, because John says it's easy not to like his behavior, but we can be sympathetic to his background, especially with Tywin. I can totally be sympathetic to his background for sure. However, there does come a point with Tyrion for me that's I don't know. It's hard. Does anyone else think that it's hard that it's going to be very, basically that Tyrion is now irreversibly Spider-Man 3, the Black Spider-Man? Like, that there's not going to be a way for him to get back to being Tyrion. I know you can never go back to who you were, but I don't know. I wonder. I don't know. I don't know. I don't trust Tyrion. Anyway. Meridian says, do you think he's going to become even more like Tywin? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, she was asking you, but I answered. Harry Meridian. I think he is going to become more like Tywin because I think he is absolutely Tywin's son. He is the daddy look at me son, and daddy didn't look, so he became daddy. That's really weird. I do, and I think he's a Lannister to the core more than Jaime and Cersei.
Yeah.
A Lannister to the core. And
Yeah.
forget secret targs, forget all that. He has defined himself because he's had to by being a Lannister. Jaime wanted to be a knight and blah, blah, blah. Cersei wanted to be a man or wanted to be the queen. Like, that's how she defined herself.
Cersei's done nothing but try to knowingly or unknowingly sabotage the name of Lannister. Yes. And all Tywin's been doing is tidying up after her absolute complete fuck-ups. So, yeah, Tyrion is actually, you know, he should inherit Castle Rock.
Yeah,
he would be the best person for the job, but you know.
And that's not to say that a Lannister can't be good. In the same way that, you know, people, we've said it several times, you know, Starks can be bad.
Yeah,
and were often bad in the history of of Westeros. But yeah, anything else then for
no.
I guess the only other thing is that Tywin in this chapter, he isn't that concerned with the Robb threat and what's happened up at the Dreadfort and all that kind of thing, or not the Dreadfort, but up at Winterfell and all that kind of thing. He's not that concerned. So there's already evidence for.
Yeah, he already knows that there's going to be, you know, that's not going to be a threat in the next few weeks, because of course this wedding has to be at once. This all has to happen like very immediately.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that soon. But right now we're on to Sam 2. I mean, this is Sam 2. Sam has had maybe the best introduction to a character in the series. Just action-packed. From Sam 1 to Sam 2, just non-stop action, great reveals of history. It further, you know, supports our belief that Sam will be the one telling this story at the end, or rewriting down this history at the end, because he's very observant and he's given stories all the time. And we find out that he, much as he hates it, they are referring to him as Slayer. The Night's Watch, and there's is it 44 left, 46? I can't remember what the number was left of the 300 that were at the Fist.
Yeah, not many.
Camping out at Craster's Keep, and very poor manners. So my question is, to start off before we get into what happens at Craster's Keep. I would like to propose that Craster is an idiot for letting the Night's Watch in. I don't think I would do it. I would keep all my sister wives around me and say, oh, what? My sons and the Whites are after you? Jog on, please. Keep moving. Here's a little bit of bread, but keep moving. I don't want any trouble here. I don't know why Craster takes them in. Is it just an opportunity for him to lord over them? Because it's such a dangerous thing to do. I mean, he can't ever hope to win against these guys.
I don't know if this is some sort of like part of his curse that he has to. There are certain conditions. Maybe it's something. Maybe he has to, and it's something that we don't know about. I think I was more interested in. Sorry, that's Marwyn. I can't get him to shut up. That just like Craster's Keep, the fact that it seems to be warmer than the rest of the north, like within the walls, it seems to be. There's a warmth in there that you don't get anywhere else, and it's like, is there some sort of magical defense or protection, or is this? I think there's something that's again related to this whole, you know, this catch-all excuse of it's to do with the north and old magic and knowledge that we've lost.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Claire's withholding her supplies from Marwyn, much like Craster does from the Night's Watch, and now he's forming a mutiny because he only gave him 2 loaves of bread. So that's why Marwyn is going mad.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sense of this chapter. I mean, there's no point in going through the whole mutiny because it was horrendous. But even before we get there, this whole, I don't know, I think there's some sort of protection. There's something that's surrounding the actual location of Craster's Keep, whether it's to do with him or whatever. I mean, he does say that no attacks will happen while they're at Craster's, and he's like, nor would there be, that a godly man has no cause to fear such. And that he basically says to the Night's Watch, you lot are better you better get yourselves right with the gods. So he kind of is coming across as this sort of like, I'm a godly man, and I'm protected, I've got nothing will harm me or hurt me, funnily enough, in that chapter. But yeah,
It can't be the first
I struggle a lot with Craster to make sense of who he is. The thing that just blows my mind is that quote that I've mentioned several times now, but later on down the line in Feast, I think, when Sam is with Gilly, and he refers very casually in the middle of a conversation to Mance being Craster, Mance being the baby's father and Craster being the baby's grandfather, which kind of makes you think, right, that's one of what? Because that means that either Dalla was one of Craster's sister wives, or Mance is related to Craster somehow, and maybe he's like one of Craster's sons, or it's just right. It's in there. It's in. If I can find exactly where it is, we will get to it. I know that when we get to it in Feast, we'll be like, okay, there it is. What does it mean? And we can go back to Craster. But I just get stuck. I get completely stuck on Craster in this whole magic that surrounds him, and Craster's. So it's huge. It's a huge area because you've got the baby boys, and Craster's sons, and it's just there's it's too much to kind of try to solve at this stage. I think it's enormous.
Yeah, it is. And Ridian says there's 2 babies and there is a baby swap later on, but I do think there is something to Mance needing to be with the wildlings in order for the wildlings to not be attacked, because they aren't that far from the whites that attacked the Night's Watch. So there's a reason that they haven't been attacked. Like, Mance is able to move large amounts of people and not get attacked, but Mormont can't. So why can't Mormont protect his people, but Craster and Mance can? So there is something there. There is something that's happening with those guys. But yeah, I just feel like Craster, this is the human frailty in Craster for me, that he needs to have these guys to show off what he has and what they don't have. He gets bored with just being around all these women all the time and needs to kind of lord over some men. I guess he needs to have to show off, I guess, because it can't be the first time that a Night's Watch brother has complained about Craster's measly rations. But by the way, he doesn't have to give you anything. Shut up. He doesn't have to give you a thing. But of course, he can if there's only one of him and there's 40 odd of you. And Mormont's like pathetic attempts to, you've broken guest right. And
we're cursed. We're cursed. Well, they kind of, maybe they are from that moment onwards.
Yeah. But I mean, Mormont has also cursed them by losing more than 2/3 of them at this stage.
Yeah, true.
So I mean, they're cursed either way.
Yeah.
So and to be honest, if I'm one of the brothers, what am I going to do? Run for my life from whites, or just like eat, drink, and be merry for the little time I've left on this earth? Because the shocking thing is that they didn't mutiny sooner. Like, that's the shocking thing. They didn't rebel sooner, because there's very little hope here.
Well, he kind of admits in the last minutes of his life, oh shit, I got this completely wrong. We've been going about this completely the wrong way. And I'm sure there must have been men in his ranks who knew that, or at least noticed, you know, we're not, this isn't right with this, you know, we've got no chance. And he, you know, he realizes that in his last moments, unfortunately. It's that he has this kind of epiphany as he's taking his last breath. Why do you think he wants Jorah to take the black?
Jorah would be good on the wall with slaves.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Jorah would be good on the wall. Will there be a point to having a Night's Watch once Jorah comes along? That's the question.
Do you think Jorah will be on the wall at some point? If this is his father's dying wish?
There's a need for it. I could definitely see Jorah there. I could definitely see Davos there. I mean, it depends. It depends on whether we need it at the end. It's surprised. Was he offered the black by Ned, or was Ned going to just take his head? Was Jorah offered the black?
I don't think he was. I think Ned was just going to, you know, mete out the King's justice.
Yeah. Because I thought Jorah mentioned at one stage that he wouldn't want to take the black because his father was at the wall. I thought we talked about that there was a crossover with Jon, with Ned not wanting to take the black, or Jon didn't want Ned to take the black because he didn't want his dad at the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very sad. And what did you make of his raven saying corn, and then he says no more corn, or something like that? There's something along those lines. The raven is interjecting in his last words. It's like, shut up.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of the raven, or the crow, or the raven in that sense. There was something that he said right at the end that seemed really unusual. Was it actually Sam? Was he saying Sam? He was saying, so he kept saying, he says snow and corn a lot in this chapter, but there's something else that I'm sure he says somebody's name as well.
Yeah, he says snow a lot. Yeah, and Sam is completely convinced that Jon is dead as well. That horrible thing with Sam when they're burning. Is it Bannon? And Sam's mouth begins to water at the smell of him, and it's like, oh God, this is dark. This is really, really dark. He says, the raven says they at the end.
Right. Okay.
With that's with the women. I don't know if he says Sam. Let me just see.
Yeah, right. He does. It's when Craster comes in and says, "I have a son," and the raven says, "Sam."
Oh.
Which, yeah.
Yeah, I can't find it, but yeah, I'll take your word for it. Yeah. I mean,
I have a son, and the raven says Sam, or at least Roy de Treese did. And then Sam suggests taking the baby to the Night's Watch, that the Night's Watch raise the baby.
Yes. Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that.
Well, remember that Mormon said that to him before, the last time they were at Craster's Keep, that they would like to take the sons. They couldn't for whatever reason. AU says that Tormund said that they have been attacked when they don't like the fires, by whites, but not others, right? I think the others are different. The others will attack you no matter what.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks, AU. Forgiveness is needed for Jorah. Yeah. Meridian says, I think Jorah will be the 1,000 Lord Commander of the Watch. Yeah. And I think
that'd be good.
Potentially the Night's Watch could be looking south to protect the north at that stage.
Yeah.
I think there'll be a switcheroo at the wall at some stage. Not necessarily, there'd be a different purpose, I think. AE says, Children of the Forest taught ravens to talk. So are these ravens telling Children of Forest what's going on? Yeah, maybe. And Blood Raven said that all ravens have Children of the Forest spirits in them. Yeah, they're all like, yeah. I mean, it's one of those moments where you really feel the impact of a death in a book. I mean, definitely with Beric's death in the next chapter as well, even though he didn't die. But that moment where Sam says he just finds himself with Mormont's head in his lap.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know how he got into that position.
Yeah.
And it feels so, this moment is so raw, and it's so, like, Sam has been through the ringer at this stage. I mean, they all have. But you've still got Delores Ed, like, quipping all along, you know.
One of my favourite, and I was actually on the train coming back from London listening to this, and I burst out laughing when Ed said, "Dying's no excuse for lying down."
Yeah. And then says, you know, oh, I bet you'll smell good if we have to burn you, and there'll be a lot of crackling on you. I like crackling. Yeah, you like when Ed comes along. It's just funny. But yeah, it's a lot for Sam to take in, and it's a great POV because we're in his position, because this is all new to us as well.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant for that in and of itself. But he's very determined to make sure that people know that it's the dragon glass that killed the White, or the other, not him, which I found interesting. And that whole thing with Mormont saying how much knowledge that they've lost.
Yeah. All the men should be armed with these dragon glass. You know, oh my God, how could we have got it so wrong? Yeah.
But, you know, Mormont, you got a lot wrong.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I think it'd be a shorter list if we get the things he gets right.
Well, I mean, the thing is, even though they say they take no part in the realms of men, but and it should be that it's a different type of order, and it's a different type of living up at the wall, and there should be a different mission and a different way of, you know, it's different in the north, and especially at that location in the north. But really, even though they've got their vows and the history, and they all wear black, and they all, you know, it actually, they're just where they come from. Even though they're rapists and murderers and disgraced lesser lords and third sons, they're bringing the realm to the wall. That's all there is there in terms of culture and who's kind of, you know, manning the wall. It is the realms of men that are there guarding the realms of men, that are saying that they're not supposed to be involved in the realms of men. And it's like, but that's who Mormont is, that through and through. He's, you know, and it's not, he's basically in his dying moment saying, oh God, how, you know, wow, we got this so wrong. But he's not going to be around to find out what happens. But yeah, you know, they did, and they've lost all this knowledge. They should have embraced the North much more, whereas what they did was they continued to have that same culture of, you know, where they came from in Westeros. Yeah.
And Tyrion, if I remember correctly, in Game of Thrones, remarks on the fact how reverential Mormont is to him. How I'm pretty sure at one stage he has to tell him to stop calling him Lord. Isn't there something like that with Mormont? He just says, "Just call me Tyrion." like I feel like there was something to do with Mormont and that. It's hard to break away from that system, and at the same time, when you're in that Brienne Jaime situation with the likes of Shagwell and Rourke and the kinds of characters that ordinary people have to deal with all of the time, and even in the next chapter with Arya, like what the mountain is putting people through.
Yeah.
Like being an ordinary person in Westeros, the safety, the relative safety of the wall, if you're there at the right time, is quite an attractive thing.
Yeah.
You get 3 meals a day. You've got this brotherhood. You don't have people threatening to rape you or murder you for no reason.
Yeah, well, it's potentially a second chance at life, isn't there? And we've had it sold to people like Jon and Theon before, where it's like, you know, there's possibilities for you to rise quite high in the ranks, and you know, things aren't all that bad, and you can go out on adventures ranging, and it's
Absolutely.
like, oh, okay, right, that's preferable to death.
You're instantly given the power of a lord.
Yeah,
like you can decide the fate of this wildling. You can decide the fate of somebody who's committed treason. But and again, it just points to the fact that Mormont was a terrible Lord Commander.
Yeah, he was.
And he realizes that in this chapter.
Yeah.
He was a terrible Lord Commander, partly because he couldn't give up the realms of men, and he wasn't very good at making decisions. A lot of that maybe has to do with the fact that he didn't come up through the ranks of the Night's Watch, that for some reason he decides to go and be the Lord Commander. It also foreshadows that Slint has no hope.
Yeah,
There's no chance that's ever going to work. And a lot of what Mormont is saying in his final hours, his final moments, a lot of it will be the decisions, or will lead into the decisions that will get Jon killed.
Yeah.
You know, accepting the wildlings. He may have to accept the whites. Accepting the wildlings, the dragonglass, all that kind of thing. That's all stuff that Jon will push for the realm of the living.
Who are the ones?
What side of the wall you're on?
Mormont says that the wildlings are just men, and you know we completely lost sight of the enemy. There's just, before I forget, there is something a little bit earlier in this chapter that I want to bring up. 2 Sam chapters now. In both of these 2 Sam chapters, we've had reference to Sam being laughed at and derided for his poor archery skills, mocking him, and there's this, like, it happened in the previous chapter as well, and I know I've said it a million times before, but I'm going to say it again. I think that this foreshadows Sam having some kind of epic moment in the future where he kills somebody with an arrow with his archery skills. Because it's so random that this has come up. It's a random concept. Like, why are we keep hearing about how bad Sam is at archery? We understand the whole craven bit and the coward bit, and even in this chapter, Sam says, "I'm not scared anymore." He's willing to kind of take on the next challenge, and he's been presented with Gilly and this baby. But in the where we are currently in the books, Sam is in the Citadel, he's in Old Town, and Euron and the Ironborn are around that vicinity, and I honestly think, if this whole, God, how is this story going to deal with Euron? How are we going to get? And I just think it's going to be really simple. And I think even by accident, Sam is going to shoot him through the eye with an arrow through his crow's eye, and that'll be the end of you. I think that I don't know why I've got absolutely no grounding or fact or anything for this, apart from the fact that why are we constantly reminded about how bad Sam, and this mocking thing about how bad he is at archery? I think he's going to have this epic heroic moment where he takes out a big baddie, and he's going to do it by using these archery skills that he's been mocked at for all his life.
Well, let's not forget that this is not only the second Sam chapter where that has happened, it's also the second Sam chapter where he's done something incredibly heroic. And you know, I was a fat kid. I've been a fat person all my life, overweight, big boned, whatever. But you will never be bullied in the way as harshly or as severely as how you bully yourself.
Oh
And
yeah,
that
yeah,
self-criticism that he turns inward. And there's so many references in this chapter to him not achieving anything, him being too fat to do something. And it's all like, I mean, he gets this from everybody outside him, but none of it penetrates in the same way as the criticism he gives himself. And I do think that his biggest heroic moment, I don't know if it'll be an accident. I think it will be, I hope it will be tied to him realizing he can do it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
he does it.
yeah.
It'll be the total reverse of an Edmure who's really arrogant and brash and showy, and when it comes to shooting the arrow he can't do it
Yeah,
and gives
yeah,
up.
yeah,
Total opposite. He'll go, I can do this, look at everything I've done,
yeah,
I can do this.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that'll be the moment when he
yeah.
succeeds. So I hope it's not an accident, but Sam is George. I think Sam
And
is
he's going
George.
to have his moment. He'll have to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And it's no accident, you know, that we get a lot of these very strong female kind of arcs around Sam as well, or connected with Sam in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Or very strong female themes connected with Sam, like with the women here at Craster's Keep and his mother and things like that. Because George was actually, before his relationship with his current wife, and his current wife I think is a feminist writer as well, but his previous partnership with his previous partner was a very famous feminist writer, but I can't remember her name. So there's no accidents there with Sam, that he is definitely going to be a lot more progressive. He's self-deprecating in, I don't know how to say this without sounding ridiculous, but in a more productive way than Tyrion is. Tyrion turns it outwards and hurts people. Sam,
yeah, I think Sam uses it to measure how he's being received by other people. Like with Gren, like he says things to Gren all the time, like, "Oh, but I'm too fat and I can't fit into this, and I can't," you know, he puts himself down all the time. And the reaction that he gets from Gren is almost bewilderment, like, what are you even talking about? And that probably reassures him that it's like, okay, you can't see what I'm seeing. That's quite, you know, these little subtle things probably do bolster him a little bit. But I think, and not that I'm saying he's asking for you know, confirmation constantly from his friends all the time that he's not slow and big and useless and blah 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 and what have you, but he's not as mean as Tyrion is.
He's the gentlest character that we get POV from. And I think it's very easy to underestimate the power of gentleness and kindness, and that side of humanity has a purpose. And it has a purpose especially for Sam, because it makes him more observational and in a good way, and he's very quickly learned something about the world. And here we have it with the dragon glass, but Mormont gives him his last words. And I mean, there's very few others that he could have done that with, I guess, but you know, there's a reason why they trust him. Aemon trusts him later on as well. And Jon trusts him, of course. Him and Jon have this connection, but there is a purpose to it, and because he is the only character that has that kind of side to him that's very pure, that POV character, I should say. I can't think of another character. Brienne has honor, I guess. She's not gentle.
Yeah, she's not gentle. She's quite naive in that innocent sort of way, but he's one of my favorite characters. I think I do hope he gets his moment.
Even Brienne has that side to her that to be heroic is to be honorable, and there is a certain glory hunting aspect of that.
Yeah, and vengeance as well.
Sam doesn't have any notions about being glory or doing anything for glory.
No,
he doesn't have that. He hates that, and he shies away from that. And it kind of reminds me of George with the series in a way. Like I wonder how much of the glory of writing this book is a heavy burden to carry in a lot of ways. But yeah, I think Sam, that human side of the story is going to be important, because in a lot of ways he's like knee deep in the magic of this story, but he really grounds it. He really does ground it in a way that other characters who are knee deep in magic don't, like Dany, for instance. But speaking of characters knee deep in magic, should we move on to Arya?
Yes. So, just that we leave Sam with this order to go to the wall, and he's now on his way to the wall with Gilly and the baby.
Actually, can I just ask, are Craster's wives protected by that magic now? Because they're protected by that oath, whatever oath he has, or whatever.
Whether it's to do with the keep, like where the keep is, or
they're like mothers, all of these sons. So
yeah, it's funny how they say Craster's sons, and they'll be here soon. That like Craster's sons rather than our sons.
Yes. And just that they like they're proper others.
Yeah,
We went from Tyrion where it's like them versus us, and we're going to go straight into we're going to go straight into Arya where it's them versus us. But the Ravens are going they. Marwan is saying they.
Have you noticed how he tries to make him sound? He tries to make himself sound like a much bigger dog.
If you haven't seen Marwan before, he's a wolfhound.
Oh, Marwan. Okay, so Arya.
Arya 6. Yeah, we're really piling up Arya and Cat chapters. I think we get more Arya chapters than anyone else in Storm of Swords. So we had a lot in Clash, and I think we get a lot in Storm as well. So Arya, I really don't have much for this chapter. I have one question for this chapter. My only question for this chapter, and I literally just wrote down one thing. You can't see that, but it's there. Did the Lord of Light, judge the Hound to be innocent, or does this prove that religion has little impact or little meaning, little consequence in the world? Does it mean anything at all?
Well, first of all, I'd completely forgotten that the entire fellowship of the Brotherhood Without Banners
I thought you were going to say ring.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten that they had all decided that they were going to worship R'hllor. I for some reason I'd totally forgotten that. Even Harwin from Winterfell is like on his knees, kind of crying. You know, the night is dark and full of terrors, and it was like, whoa, that's Thoros has really kind of got his religion on all of a sudden. He's this kind of like this Lord of Light woken in his heart. It's so hard because something is being demonstrated here, and there's this whole thing where like religion, well, prove it to me then. And it's like, well, here you go, here's a miracle, or here's a, in religious text, any religion, there seems to be examples of where God or the higher spiritual being of that particular faith has intervened and said, look, let me prove to you who I am and what I can do. And it feels as though we're kind of getting a little bit of that in these chapters with, looking into the flames. We've had the shadow baby. We've now had this whole resurrection thing. And it's clearly a magical occurrence to me rather than proving that religion exists, or proving that the faith of R'hllor is the true. I know that a lot of fans of A Song of Ice and Fire, when it comes to religion, will point to, as nasty as it can be, but will point to the Lord of Light and the worshipping of R'hllor as probably the religion that is the realist, or the most, where you can, that's the one that I've heard other people say, oh, well, that's the religion that I would follow, because it seems to be the one that, you can actually see it working. And it's like, but maybe that is because it's not, I think that's probably because it's magic. It's a magical thing, rather than that here's proof that R'hllor is real, or that God is real, or religion in this sense is real.
You can see the followers of, you can see why people would turn to that faith, though. I mean,
yes, completely. Because
Harman has followed the Seven all his life, and what have the Seven ever done for him? You can see it instantly. And the Faceless Men follow R'hllor, right?
Yes, I hesitate to say.
I think
they
it's like
worship the many-faced God, don't they? Which is
all. It is the many-faced God, but isn't there a connection to R'hllor? Maybe I got that wrong.
You could also argue, though, that there is a connection to the old gods, with the black and white and the potential sacrificing and blood sacrifice in the lower levels of the House of Black and White. So I'm not. I think they're definitely attached to a religion. I'm just not entirely sure which one it is.
It is the many-faced God, but I think we talked about this before. I could be misremembering that, but anyway, definitely the power of R'hllor is undeniable. But I think, from, even though the Hound can see what happens at the end of this, I don't think the payoff of potentially being brought back from the dead is enough to convince him that this is a good thing to follow, because of the fire and the fiery shield and everything. But it definitely makes Arya sit up and pay attention.
It could be that, again, if you think of the show, and if this has got anything to do with it, that it seems to be that, and wouldn't this be prophetic, the character who has a morbid fear of fire and is the one that's kind of chosen as the prophet of the Lord of Light and the God of Fire. And maybe this is something to do with it in this chapter. Maybe R'hllor did save the Hound because he sees the Hound as his prophet, or I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Meridian says the faceless men that have the many-faced God. They just see the Lord of Light as one of the many-faced God faces. I want you to say that fast 10 times. I knew there was something to do. I knew that there was some sort of connection there. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it'd be very nice if the Hound comes back as, like, a follower of R'hllor and one of the greatest champions of R'hllor. But yeah, we have this. So we have this. The Beric is still out fighting the cause that Ned originally sent him out to fight, which was to make the Lannister men accountable for the raping and pillaging that they've been doing, and he holds the Hound accountable because he is a Clegane and one of the Lannister men, and therefore he must pay on behalf, because he's collected. I think the logic is a bit wrong there.
It's not a fair trial, really.
It's not a fair trial, and I think I'm the least religious person I know. I just don't follow any religion. But if I was going to R'hllor, I might give R'hllor a go, because I think he's right not to judge the Hound guilty here. He was following Joffrey's orders, as horrible as it is. But we don't know what their commandments are in the religion. Thou shalt not take pleasure in the killing of children. May not be a commandment. But certainly honor thy king is certainly a commandment that he has to live by. And he does it. And as despicable and horrific as it is, he isn't his brother, and I don't think Beric's logic is all that realistic here or sensible. And it makes me wonder, how successful are they as a group? How many Lannister men have they been able to even put on trial? And again, we mentioned this way back in the Game of Thrones discussion, that first instance where all these villagers show up to Ned to say, this is what Tywin's men are doing here, here, and here. Preston Jacobs, who is, the king of tinfoil, has a great series of videos on the conspiracy of that. Were they actually being truthful about that? Because the story changes so much across the different villagers. I don't know if you remember us talking about that when they got to court, and how, it starts out with there being like a dozen men, and then 50, and then hundreds and hundreds, and it just changes. So you're never quite sure, well, is Clegane out there raping and pillaging? What's going on? And was this all just a way, potentially Littlefinger, just a way of stirring up conflict between Ned, the Crown, and the Tywins, or Tywin and Ned, while Robb was away? I think that was Preston Jacobs' argument.
Right.
And it certainly makes sense, because at one stage the villagers say they go into a town and they completely destroy it and nobody's left, and yet there's witnesses to what they did, and there's eyewitnesses, and it's like, but nobody survived. How can you say what they did? They go to door and kill them. How do you know this happened? And it's very detailed, and so there's a lot of there are holes in the story, and Ned's so he's just been taken down by Jaime, so he's so ready for a fight with the Lannisters, and that's when he sends out Beric, and it's a very impassioned, very kind of call to arms. D'Artagnan and the Three Musketeers and all those men go out, and it's very kind of old school knightly duty, go out and protect the
defending the realm.
And
it's he describes them as knights, squires, lords, and commoners, and the Hound describes them as outlaws and broken men. But they've got this sense of them being the forgotten fellowship. But he's also described, as they die in battle, as they're falling, there's no shortage of commoners to pick up the mantle and join. Now, this is quite interesting, because just going back to the faith issue for a second, we've talked a couple of times about Stannis and the Red Witch, and how does he possibly hope to, win over the realm with this new religion? It's just implausible. He's on a hiding to nowhere. Yet Thoros and Dondarrion seem to be doing a pretty good job of converting everybody to this new faith quite easily, including the commoners. And but the thing is, they've seen him, the way he's described in this chapter, the way he moves, the way he walks around. There's this serenity about him that's almost, prophet-like. So of course everyone is going to be, there's an example of him being reborn and resurrected in this chapter. So Arya sees it, and everybody else around will have seen it several times before. He's a mess. Beric is an absolute mess. How he can even stand up, I don't know. But he's got this aura about him that's somehow, and so that's how it's being done when we were questioning, how does Stannis think he's going to be able to convert everybody? And it's like, it's happening right now. They're doing a fine job of it.
Yeah, but I feel like a large part of Stannis's problem is his personality.
Oh yeah.
And Stannis is only doing it in benefit of Stannis.
Well, no,
Beric is suffering for the people.
And they're not burning effigies of other religions and being aggressive about you must join and you must relinquish your faith. People are just taking this up by wanting to be part of this like forgotten fellowship. I really enjoyed this chapter, actually. I started it thinking, oh yeah, this is the one with the fight with the Hound and Beric, but just the description of the Brotherhood without banners, and also getting into the mind of Sandor Clegane from his responses to being questioned, but also his description again of what he thinks a knight is, and this whole concept of a knight is just a murderer with glittery things like ribbons and extra, but underneath it all, they're just murderers. And so if you've got knights here that are part of this ridiculous group, then, I spit on you. There's no respect there for me from being a knight.
They're holographic in the shade.
Yeah. Going back to what you said before about that, again, that visceral image with the wall and the climbers falling off the wall and the earth kind of like soaking up the blood and it like absorbing the bodies and the blood. And it's here again about Beric's mouth full of blood, and when he opens his mouth, just blood comes out, which makes me think of Bran's vision or dream that he had of the knight who, like, you open his visor and it was just blood coming out of his mouth. I think it was, and we all went, oh yeah, that's the mountain. Well, it happened. The imagery is here in this chapter as well about the earth drinking, like literally drinking the blood as Beric is dying. The earth is kind of soaking up his blood, and they are in again one of these locations where it's a hill cave. It's an old place. It's full. It's described as being deep, very deep. You don't know how far it goes, and it's harboring all these old secrets. The other thing, just very quickly, that I wanted to mention, I've just noticed in my notes here that Thoros is described as being really thin and droopy, and like he kind of puts that to, well, that happens when you out and about having this lifestyle for like the best part of a year. And it's like, is it though? Is it every time he does the resurrection, he also loses a bit of himself as well?
I wonder, does he need a ruby?
Yeah, or some sort of life-sustaining thing that Mel has. But yeah,
there's definitely something. He's definitely losing something, I think, every time he brings Beric back. It's a chapter like this, though, in and of itself, it makes for such a great little short story. I feel like this is one of those chapters. Of course, there's lots of mention of different people that are not in the chapter, but I still think it's the description of that fight and just Arya's reaction to it, and even the fact that they go ahead with the trial based on Arya saying, "I know he killed somebody." And that basic question, it opens up. I mean, you've talked a lot about religion in this and Clash, but it opens up this whole question. I mean, if God exists, why do good things happen to bad people? And with Arya, from the perspective of a child, and she's looking at this going, I know he killed that boy. He said he killed that boy. Why has your God decided that this is okay? So, and Beric is like, that's it. He's already in hell. And I love that line. When he stands up, it's like, oh my God, I love Beric. I also love the actor on the show that plays Beric.
Yeah,
and
but I mean, again, you could look at that on a different scale of they all stood there and shout and cried for the Lord of Light to protect them, and maybe the outcome of this fight is the Lord of Light did protect them by making sure that his chosen prophet was unharmed in this kangaroo court kind of scenario.
There's a bit of all sorts thrown into the religion, the Lord of Light, R'hllor religion. AU and Meridian were talking about different influences, perhaps on the character of R'hllor, like the pagan, the druids, all that kind of thing. You know, there's lots of South American religions that burned effigies and things like that. There's lots of religions that have burned. I mean, even up until what are they called in Munster? There's a hardcore history. Can't remember what they're called, but there's a hardcore history about these Christians that used fire to burn right into the Middle Ages or beyond the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Hi, Connie, welcome. And just this. I even like the way there's a bit of Buddhism thrown in. You know, it's like, no, he's getting his.
Yeah,
don't worry, he's getting
like
his.
Karma. Connie says, they may have taken her on her word because she's Ned Stark's daughter. So, you know, for his honor, they accepted that. Okay, that's the charge that we're levying against you.
And they need a witness.
Yeah.
But that's what made me go on my little Preston Jacobs spiel, because I wonder how difficult are they finding it to get witnesses. We've heard that they're raping and pillaging, but did that start before or after Ned's order? Like what? When did that start? Were they forced into that situation, or not forced into it, but were they kind of given the green light because Ned goes after them and Beric goes after them? The other thing that's interesting about this chapter is the Hound kind of taunting them with the brave companions, and they get very like, don't you call us that. It's like Marty McFly, don't call me yellow. Or chicken. Which was
chicken,
chicken, But
no, Marwyn, there is no chicken. No.
Oh sorry. I didn't say the W word either. All right, so we're talking. All right, so that's it for Arya, I think, right?
Yes.
This also makes her angry at Sansa again. She has to defend Sansa's lies.
Yes.
Cat 6. Oh God. Back to frustration central with Rob. So we're on to Cat 6, our last chapter this evening. We'll try and keep this short because they're all stupid. They are all stupid. They're all stupid. That's all I can say. Done. End of discussion. You're all stupid.
I mean, how could they not tell that the Freys are just being so fishy in this chapter, and also the fact that they did the classic, let's throw them off guard by giving them the horrendous news about Winterfell. And they were stupid. Everything about like how he's too young, he's too naive, he's too easily distracted by the Westerlings, and I haven't put much about this chapter, but I have put at the bottom of my notes at the end of this chapter, you know what, they actually should have listened to Edmure at the end. This is like, is this the third time in this book that we've said that Edmure is right? That Edmure's completely, well, again, I don't know if it's just a classic undermining of Edmure, or whether or not he just he's not assertive enough to kind of, I mean, he's grieving as well. He's grieving for his father. But at the end of the day, he's now the Lord, the liege Lord, in terms of the phrase. And he could assert himself in that position and say, right, you know what? Forget all this backwards and forwards with messages. I'm going to go to, because there wouldn't necessarily have been any threat in terms of conspiracies and plans between the Boltons and Tywin and Walder Frey. Just to go directly there and say, this is how it's going to be, Walder Frey and House Frey. I'm your liege lord. I will marry one of your daughters or granddaughters of my choosing, and then this is how it's going to be. It could have even been that Walder Frey was like, actually, yeah, that sounds so much better than any shit that I had going on in the background with Tywin. So, you know, I just...
Can we just stop the presses?
Yes.
You just said, you ladies always say that, but you're always right. that people should listen to Edmure? Because I'm shocked, AU. That's good. No, but definitely, he says, listen, I'm still the one I'm the boss. Like, they need to listen to me. I mean, you know, okay, Rob, you screwed them over. I didn't. I still get a say in this, and he's right to be. And by the way, the grief of the father? I'm not sure if it's grief of the father or just, you know, because he's been getting so much shit from Rob and all of these northern men suddenly in his space.
Oh,
and sorry.
Meridian's got to go and rescue a giraffe from the fence.
Oh, I hope he's okay.
Oh, good luck, Meridian.
Best of luck. So that sounds very strange out of context, but Meridian works in a national park, right, in South Africa.
Yes, she's a wildlife vet. Yeah.
So yeah, I think Edmure has been undermined for the best part of a year by all of these people around him, and constantly making him feel like shit for the decisions he makes, constantly like undermining him, beating him down. And I feel like it would get to anybody and make you second guess yourself and go against your instincts. And we don't really get any sense that he's a complete buffoon.
No. And in fact, there's that bit where I kind of really warmed to him at the end of the chapter where he was like, oh, okay, I might be the new lord, but there's also a king here, and there's also this. But you know, he kind of realizes that with like Brynden just doesn't defend Edmure the way that he did. You know, as a Tully, I'm kind of let down quite. I used to think that the Blackfish was this like amazing heroic character, but I'm a little bit disappointed in terms of this reread. But yeah, he even like has a bit of a laugh and a joke at the end where he tries to sort of take you know, he tries to have a sense of humor about it, and then realizes that okay, nobody's laughing, and so you know, yeah, I'll just fall into line. And it's like he's not that. He's actually doesn't seem like such a bad guy. No. We see Edmure through Kat's eyes, and Kat sees him as this silly younger brother who, you know, he makes the wrong decisions and he doesn't listen. But actually, he's very honourable in terms of his people and the small folk. And I thought it was really sad when he asked, did the father, you know, did he mention me at all at the end? And Kat had to lie.
Yeah. Can I actually talk about that for a little bit? Because this touches on what you brought up. Edmure, what we were talking about before, potential abuse in this family with Lysa and Hoster. I feel like Edmure, in a lot of ways, has been a neglected child. There's something not right with this. And Kat comments on the fact that there's so much that Edmure breaks down. He starts crying in his cups when he was drunk, and saying there's so much he left unsaid to his father. That could be read in a lot of different ways.
It could. And why did he falter with the arrow? Exactly. And there's something. I think there's something quite sinister about Hoster, and we don't get to see that really because we mainly see him through Catelyn's eyes. And as far as Catelyn's concerned, it's just, you know, wait for me, little cat, and I'll be, you know, that's the sense of Hoster Tully that you get from Catelyn.
Also, I think it's very telling that it could be read in one of two ways. But Edmure says, Walder Frey has been after me since the moment I was born. Since the day I was born, he's wanted me as a husband for one of his daughters. And now he's rushing things, and I don't get a choice in the matter. And why hasn't he been married off to a Frey? Like, ask that question, Kat. Why didn't your dad marry him off to a Frey? Why are you guys so quick to do that? Because of Rob's mistake? Like, she already says to Rob, just bend the knee. I mean, if Rob just did that, Edmure wouldn't even have to do this. There wouldn't be any threat here. Just go back. Go back to your burnt castle and try and rebuild it. And that's even before she finds out about Winterfell. It's just like, bend the knee. Just bend the knee. I feel like Hoster didn't marry Edmure to a Frey for a good reason. But also, from Edmure's point of view, with his dad, he's being used as like this little cat toy to taunt the Freys with all of his life. He hasn't even been married off to anyone else in order to put a stop to that. It's like he's been like Lysa and Kat, he's been a pawn in their game. And Kat is, I watched 2 episodes of The Order of the Green Hand on Kat, and I had to stop because they're brilliant. But also, you will hate Kat by the end of it. And you can see, like, it's already changed the way I looked at her, because she does come across as a bit of a sociopath. Like, in this, you know, Edmure says, well, you know, you could become the 9th Lady Frey. And Kat was like, yeah, and I'd do it if I had to. It's like, what? Get your 16-year-old son back to Winterfell, take the crown. Just like, someone please take control of Rob. I mean, please, somebody just, like, please, someone take control of the situation. Connie says, I think he gets belittled. Oh, sorry, Ian says, Demure Edmure couldn't resist. Ian, keep them coming, we love them. Connie says, I think he gets belittled because he's a lord's son. His man-slush reputation and drinking diminished him, a bit like Prince Charles. Yeah, that's true, actually, what's the hashtag? Sex Dungeon Master. And Connie says, Hoster, that was from AU, by the way. I'm blaming. Hoster wanted, Connie says, Hoster wanted alliances at any cost, even to give his daughter to an old man after Brandon's death, made Ned take Cat for use of his army. Potentially, as we have mentioned, as a lot of the fandom has talked about, potentially while Ned was already promised, if not married, to another woman. Being a Shara. That's and it still doesn't answer the question as to why Edmure wasn't married off to anyone. It was pregnant and damaged goods, needed to prove her fertility because Hoster needed an heir. But we I mean, I don't know. I think that there's a lot to what you were saying about Lysa potentially being abused there. And there's even a line in this chapter where she thinks about Lysa being many miles, horses and armies between her and her father. And she hasn't seen him in many years at this stage. Right, okay, John needed an heir. I see what you mean. And
his last word, Hoster's last word, surprise, surprise, was Tansy.
I left this chapter feeling really bad for Edmure and feeling really, really pissed off. And I think it'll help me handle the Red Wedding a little bit more every time I read Cap chapters. As bad as the Red Wedding is, it's just like, Rob is so infuriating as well. So it's just...
There's a line here that Lothar Frey gives, and I did think that as horrible as they are, the Freys, they were quite... I like the way they were written in this chapter, you know, the dichotomy between this kind of horrendous, murderous bastard Frey, and then you've got this kind of limping, the lame Lothar Frey, who's much more amiable and kind of can, you know, present a message much better. But within all of this complete show that was put on that every single one of them fell for. Like you said at the beginning of this chapter, they were just idiots, complete idiots. But in the middle of all this, Lothar Frey, when he's talking about Theon burning Winterfell, and who's the bastard of the bastard of Bolton, and they're all upset about all the small folk and Mika and Roderick Cassell and all of this is kind of going on. But Lothar Frey says there is confusion in war and lots of false reports, and they're kind of like, that's all we know, this is all we can tell you. And I just think that's an interesting point, actually, when we think about the stories of battles and wars that have happened in the history of this story. And it's like, we think and again, it's all about how the Meisters manipulate things by writing the stories and the songs and the singers. And it's important to remember that when we think we know historical facts of things that are supposed to have happened in Westerosi history, to remember that there are indeed lots of false reports and confusion in who's supposed to be the good guy and the bad guy in this situation. So I just really liked that. I like that line.
Like reading back on this chapter, kind of the Red Wedding is inescapable. Connie says it seems like Jon is hanging on too long. Maester is pissed at the treatment of making Jon suffer. No mercy there. Yeah, I feel like Hoster as well. I mean, you could say in this chapter that, okay, they're all grief-stricken. It's one blow after another. And Kat even says that in this chapter. But he's an old man. At this stage, thousands of men have died for Rob's claim to the throne. That is going nowhere fast. And as bad as the Freys are, it's hard not to kind of sympathize with them a little bit. And, Hoster is dead. The guy that they had a...
Well, if you're going to pick a winning side for the preservation of your house, and you're in this situation where you kind of have to pick a side, you're backed into a corner, it is kind of easy to see why you would just look at Rob and what's going on at Winter, just, the main, what seemed like, we don't know, but I would say pretty much a powerhouse in terms of Hoster has gone overnight, and all of a sudden the Freys are kind of sniffing around. But yeah, it's a mess. It's a complete mess. Rob doesn't know what he's doing. Cat's all over the place. And all of them have just heard that Winterfell has been burned to the ground. So they're just...
Also, it's very annoying that Cat can...
They don't seem like a good prospect.
Yeah, it's very annoying that Cat can conveniently abandon her long-held prejudices and overlook them. Frey has sent a bastard to treat with them. And she goes, okay, well, we just have to accept that.
Yeah.
No,
you
wouldn't accept Jon Snow.
Yeah.
I mean, why now? Like, you don't have to accept this. Rob messed up, but why does that have to affect Edmure? Why does that have to completely overturn the hierarchy? I mean, there's nothing. Yeah, I don't know.
And I think we do see a bit of it may be a bit veiled, but we do see a bit of this Cat typical prejudice earlier in the chapter where Rob pulls her to one side and informs her that Sansa is now married to Tyrion, and she's absolutely horrified at this.
Oh, Sansa's as good as dead then.
Yeah, exactly. She just writes Sansa off completely, but also the horror that she has, it almost feels as though it should be because Tyrion's a Lannister, but it kind of feels as though there's this vanity again of my beautiful daughter who's why would she have, would they have married her to him, like, of all people? There does seem to be that bit of vanity there, but yeah, you're right. And then later on she's like, okay, whatever. But I think it's because I think she's all over the place because she doesn't know what's happening with Jaime. She doesn't know if she's done the right thing. She knew from the last chapter, she admitted to herself, this whole thing with the Karstarks is entirely my fault. What have I done? So, you know, she's just everyone in this camp is a bit of a mess, to be honest with you, apart from Edmure. And yeah,
it's funny because Florent, is that the guy that got locked up with Davos in the last Davos chapter? Is that Florent?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, he gets locked up for less.
Yeah.
Stannis locks him up for less, and here's Cat out roaming around, undermining her brother, and it's hard to sympathize with them when they've let so many lions into the pit with them. The Westerlings.
There's also another very, very small nugget thrown into this chapter, which is we hear that Tarly has smashed the Glovers at Duskindale. And that will play into the story much later on when we find out about White Harbour and the Mandleys wanting revenge and the Glovers being involved in that. So this is obviously where it's sowing the seeds of them being involved much later on. An interesting chapter, but they do feel like a kind of capsule play for today, what's going on within this camp, you know, with Robb and the Westerlings, and there's just so much intrigue, and you know, we can see Robb quite clearly. He has to inform his mother about what's happened with Sansa. He has to keep her updated, but at the same time, he's very much kind of pushing her away from any like decision making or any influence that she may have. He's just like, whoa, I don't know if I can trust you anymore. And a lot of this shit that's happened in these losses that we've had, you know, I've played my part, by fucking up the whole marriage alliance, but you know, mother, look at what you've done as well. So
there's two words that can completely summarize all of Kat's role up to this point in the series, and that's communication breakdown. Because she doesn't know when to be his mother, and she doesn't know when to be like his counsel. And Connie says she undermines her son and her brother in this, for sure. She says Kat's a jerk. But a good point here from Connie. They have poisons. Why can't they just like speed up Hoster's death and get him out of his suffering? But she wonders, are they trying to make him suffer for his treatment of Lysa and Edmure?
Possibly, yeah.
There's something very wrong with Hoster. Very wrong. I don't trust him at all. I think we'll find out more about him.
What's Iron Throne with his emojis? Cat is a fish. Cat is a tully. Cat is a tully, I think that is.
I thought it was a fox. All right. So I would like to say that at the end of this chapter, Edmure is right. Robb should bend the knee.
Yeah.
So next week, unless you have anything else to say.
Nope. So we've got the last 6 chapters then.
The last 6 chapters of Steel and Snow.
So it's all the start.
Davos 4 to John 5. So we're back to another Davos chapter. So it's basically the end of Steel and Snow. So this first book. And then we'll be into the next book. My signed copy of...
Hashtag not a fox.
Not a fox. Thanks, AU. AU, do you know when you'll be going live for Westworld this week yet? No? Maybe? And Claire, Get Out is your homework this week.
Yes. Okay, I'll find it.
Thank you to everybody who joined us in the chat. It was great having you discuss everything in the chat. That's really good fun. And if you're watching this back later on, you can I should have said that earlier, but you can actually see the chat down below if you click it, if you open it up. If you're watching it on your phone, you can click it open. Thursday, excellent. So AU is always linked down below, as is Clare. So please go and check out both their channels. AU is doing great recaps and discussions of the current Westworld series. So please go check his channel out. I'll be there on Thursday for sure. And thank you, everybody. Have a great week. We will see you next Sunday. Thank you, Claire.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Marwin. Should we all start? Should we all shout the CH? Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.